Hi, everyone, and welcome to our discussion in honor of October's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Today, we have some real pioneers and fierce advocates in the field of domestic violence, and I'm really, really excited to dig into their expertise and their experience. But first, just a few things. Nothing you'll hear today is meant to be construed as legal advice, just legal information. And second of all, we want this information to get into the hands of people that need it. So if you could go ahead and like or share this video so that folks can get a hold of this information that need to see it. So first, we'll go ahead and kick off by having everyone introduce themselves. And we can start with you, Diane, if you don't mind.
Hello. Unmuting mics is going to be hard for me. I'm Diane Lance. I'm the department head for Metro Government's Office of Family Safety. The Office of Family Safety runs both family justice centers here in our community, the Gene Crow Advocacy Center and the Family Safety Center on Murfreesboro Pike.
And Sharon?
My name is Sharon Roberson. I'm president and CEO of the YWCA Nashville, Middle Tennessee. We operate the largest domestic violence shelter in the region with 65 beds, and we offer wraparound services to help survivors and their children lead a better life.
And Karyn.
Hi, I'm Karyn Johnson. I am a survivor of domestic violence. I have had to use the services of legal aid and the YWCA when I was going through my situation. And right now I represent and speak out for the Nashville chapter of Voices, who, of course, is an advocate for domestic violence.
And finally, DarKenya.
So my name is DarKenya Waller, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Legal Aid Society of Middle Tennessee and the Cumberlands. We are Tennessee's largest nonprofit law firm, offering free civil legal services to low-income and vulnerable families. In my prior practice, I served as a domestic violence advocate attorney, and so this particular topic is very near and dear to my heart.
Wonderful. And I'm really excited to dig into all of your unique experiences. First, I'd like to hear just generally, what does it mean to you all to advocate for survivors, especially during October, during Awareness Month? And Diane, I'd like to start with you, and we'll go in that same order.
Okay, thanks. So, advocating for survivors is really important work. All advocates, all types of advocates support clients' journey, their journey to safety. Some advocates are right there in the heart of the crisis, in the immediate aftermath of an abusive episode, and focus on crisis reduction in the moment. Some advocates help out during the decision-making process, to leave, to stay, to get an order of protection, how to stay safe, what my children need, what is my risk, and what are my options. And then still some types of advocates help once the decision's been made, navigating the new waters of those decisions that you made, going to court, how that works for the order of protection hearing or for the criminal case. Going through a divorce process, immigration issues that have come up, finding a job, finding alternative housing and adjusting to that housing. So there's so many types of advocates that help victims through this journey. And I think each of us have all of those advocates. At the Family Safety Center, our advocates really focus on that first type in the heart of the crisis and in helping with decision making.
Some really important work going on down there. And Sharon, what does it mean to advocate for your folks at the shelters?
Well, first of all, I really applaud and I'm humbled by all survivors. I don't know that people really appreciate how difficult it is to change your circumstances once you are in I call it a domestic abusive relationship, because the women here at the shelter tell me they like domestic abuse, the terminology, better than domestic violence, because they want everyone to understand all the dynamics. Sometimes it's not even physical, the emotional, the psychological, the financial, the spiritual damage to your soul that domestic abuse brings about makes that terminology fit better for them. So I am humbled, and I go with those who are most affected and how they want to be viewed. But these are some of the most courageous, dynamic women that you will ever meet. And the children are just phenomenal. So I really just look at it in that light, and it means everything to be able to advocate for those in our community to have a better life.
That's really powerful. And we'll make sure and use that language if that's what's preferred. Karyn, you've become an advocate here over the course of your journey. What's that meant to you?
That has meant so much. I do agree with Diane when she states that the domestic abuse does not just come from the physical. It can be emotional, financial, mental, and to speak out and to let women know that you can get through that period in your life, especially with the resources such as those that are here today. It makes a huge difference in how the rest of your life goes for you. And so I like to remind women that we are strong, we are powerful, and we do have support out here. And so that's why I do it.
That is such an empowering message, Karyn. DarKenya?
At the Legal Aid Society, we, as I mentioned, offer free legal services to domestic violence victims. In that vein, we have the opportunity to really level the playing field for those persons who have suffered and been victims of domestic abuse. And for me, working with victims of domestic abuse, and better yet, survivors of domestic abuse, it's a really gratifying feeling to be able to use the legal opportunities that are available to people to help just level that playing field. Usually in a domestic violence situation, a domestic abuse situation, there is a imbalance of power. And what we're able to do is to make that more level so that the fight is fair. Because more often than not, those persons who have suffered in those situations have been fighting an unfair fight for so very long that it becomes a challenge to navigate it without the help of legal aid. So it means a lot to be able to offer that kind of assistance to really change someone's life, sometimes forever.
Absolutely. I thank you for all of your insight into advocacy in general. Karyn, I'd like to hear from you specifically because of your unique experience, but what is a good way for folks that are watching this and saying, I know someone that I think may be dealing with domestic abuse. Is there a way that those folks could approach or should approach their friends or neighbors, or is there a place that they can go to kind of get help in supporting their friends and family that may be dealing with something like this? What would you recommend?
I always tell people, because domestic abuse doesn't look the same like it does in the Hollywood movies and like it does on your favorite television shows. So I always try to steer people towards being educated on exactly what it is. Just like we were saying earlier, it isn't always physical. Sometimes it may be someone just telling you all the time that you're on a lower level than them. Sometimes it may be someone withholding your finances from them. I was in a situation where he would always let me know from time to time that his children didn't like me, and his parents didn't like me. And that would just come from out of the blue. And little did I know that was a part of it. So we always have to kind of educate ourselves. And if there's someone out there that believes that their loved one is in a situation, I would reach out to one of these agencies, speak with a counselor, ask them, what should I do or what can I do? And then speak to that person once they get a little bit more understanding of what domestic violence and what domestic abuse is, because you want to be able to be a help to that person and be a support to that person. And you just don't want to come to them any kind of way, even though your intentions are good. So always educate yourself and then find out, how can I support you in maybe getting you out of this situation or helping you maneuver through this situation?
Absolutely. Some really good advice. We may not know what domestic violence looks like all the time. And so maybe it's important to do some legwork to learn so we can support our friends and family. I'd like to open this next question up to our whole panel. But we know that there's this gap between reported cases of domestic abuse and instances of domestic abuse that are actually occurring. Do you all have some insight into what that gap looks like? I guess why is that gap there? What are y'all doing to kind of close that gap too? And Diane.
I don't have the percentage on me, but domestic violence and sexual assault, and certainly both can go hand in hand, are two of the most underreported crimes. I think it's probably an interesting point to bring out, what does reporting mean? Does reporting mean bring to police? Where there are lots of places that you can report to. You can report to a family member. You can report to your employer. You can report to a good friend. And to Karyn's point, making sure those around this person really struggling with this situation needs to understand the dynamics and what it means and how to be helpful, and the importance of patience. This is a victim survivor-led process. You cannot force someone to make the decisions that you think they should make. You don't have their whole perspective on their situation and the barriers that they would need to go through and the impacts of those barriers. And so it is patient work, but learning how to lead people to the right places that can be helpful. Here in Metro, we train every single Metro employee, it's required, on domestic violence, and every supervisor on how to be helpful in those situations, so that we try to make sure in the workplace people know what some of the signs are, they know how to approach, they know how to be helpful, and hopefully someone will disclose and reach out for help. Most importantly, making sure people know that they are not alone. That is just a critical message, that you are not alone in this. And when people feel alone, they don't report.
Thank you so much.
I think it's really difficult to really explain the why, other than to say this is very difficult and it's very complex. I do say that people often think they see the end result. They see when things have really gotten to that extreme, and they don't understand that things are not always like that. There are wonderful days. I've seen children here at the Weaver Center that want to see their fathers. And the reason we use male and female, that's typically what it is. And they want to see their daddy. They miss their father. They don't even recognize that this is really a bad environment. The women will often love these men, and you have to understand and appreciate that, because it's just not all day one something really horrible happens. No one would stay under those circumstances. It's something that builds up over time. It's something that has a lot of different dynamics to it. So often you won't report it because you just think that you can handle it, and they don't want to report it. And in some circumstances, they think that, especially when you report it to the police, it might make the situation worse. You may want the abuse to stop, but you don't want your husband or your loved one in jail. Those are two different things. And so I think that a lot of women don't report. They don't want the father of their children in trouble. There are a lot of dynamics here. So it makes sense. We do know that it is underreported. And we do know as a result, these horrible statistics that we see are really underreporting what occurs, because this is a very complicated issue.
And I would likewise agree that at the point that the legal process is involved, more often than not, a significant amount of abuse has already occurred. The cyclical, way that abuse works has occurred over and over again. We've gone from the incident to the apology and the reconciliation into the honeymoon period, and back to the abuse. And it honestly takes that sweet spot for someone to actually engage outside legal help or outside law enforcement help, to address the situation. If the time frame, for that honeymoon period is over, a certain amount of time, people may not feel that it's necessary until it is. And that's the point they reach out. And just depending on what that full set of circumstances are going into that particular incident, you have another cycle before the call occurs. And statistics have shown that it takes up to 7 times that a person is put in a position of vulnerability due to domestic abuse before they actually get to the point of making that full-on call. So, I mean, if you actually just look at the numbers of how many people do call and then count the number of, multiply that by the 7 times that may have occurred before they actually came, there's a lot of domestic violence that just does not get reported.
And Karyn, I'd just love to get your insight into this question. What do you think is going on here?
Sure. Just to add to that, those ladies are absolutely right. You do go through this period of where the issue has occurred, and then there are all of the apologies, the making up time for it, and there are changes that are starting to take place. So you think and believe that everything is going to be okay, and then next thing you know, you're back in that cycle again. There's also lack of support, from family and friends. Sometimes they'll make excuses for the abuser, whether he's tired, he's stressed, he's overworked, he's worried about something, to sometimes there's even, what are you going to do if he leaves? How are you going to pay this? And how are you going to deal with that? And then there's also the embarrassment. Let's be honest. You never picture yourself being in a situation like this. And now how do you come out and tell somebody what's been going on in the privacy of your home? And how do you get past that? And then you're thinking, oh, I'm never going to live this down. And like it was said before, I'm the only one that's going through this. And so that's why we're trying to stress, you're not alone. You're not the first person to go through it. And that's why these agencies and counselors and advocates are here. And so it's really important that everyone knows that you are supported and you can get out of this situation if that's something that you choose to do. Sometimes there just needs to be proper counseling and proper protocol behind that. But it's a lot of that factors in on why it takes a while to get the help and to make those reports and the call out. It's a lot that factors in.
And Karyn, I can only imagine the interaction, between, the survivor and that family member or friend to whom, you've said, I'm done. I can't do this. Oh, yeah. I'm out, but the circumstances just don't allow it. And so when they see you next, you're back with them, but it's not out of desire, it's out of circumstance, or it may be out of desire, because during that honeymoon period, you may be trying to reconcile, and just kind of that impact it has, when that you've leaned on your family and you've leaned on your family and you've leaned on your family, and they may or may not still be willing to hold you up.
And people make you second guess and doubt your decisions. I remember saying, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm tired. I'm over it. And somebody, family would come through and be like, but are you sure? Can't you guys just talk it out and work it out? What if I come over? What if I play the mediator? What? And so then you're like, man, and that confusion comes in. And so it's a lot that factors in. And really, I think I would want loved ones to stop saying, if it were me, or what you need to do is, because if I were you, then I would think like you. I can't be you and think like me and vice versa. So don't say, well, what you need to do, or if I were you, please get educated on this. Be patient and realize that person is really going through more than you know.
I love how Karyn just said, I can't be you and think like me. I think that's it's a great motto in life as well. One of the things that I did want to mention is just the gaslighting. Offenders are smart, and they are not going to just suddenly out of the blue start the violence. They're going to wait until their victim does something that is displeasing to them and use that as the reason for the violence, which is a really great tool to make sure that the person you're hurting blames themselves for what happened. And so I think that also adds into this underreport rate for domestic violence is, well, if I just hadn't, he wouldn't have. And so it really is my fault, or at least in part my fault. Same goes for sexual assault. If I hadn't been, out drinking, if I hadn't been this, it's about, when society looks at what the victim did to trigger the crime and abuse, that's when you have people fearful, self-blaming, too ashamed to report. And that is an unfortunate place to be.
And Diane, gaslighting is so subtle. You don't even know that it's happening. And by the time you figure it out, you are so deep into this swirl that you just don't know what to do. Like I gave the example earlier, at the time, the relationship I was in, to hear him say, well, my father doesn't like you. And I'm, what, how? So it's just little things like that keep adding up. Or to hear that person on the phone talking to someone else, but they're referencing everything to you without saying it to you. That plays with your mental. If nothing else, that definitely plays with your mental. And so we need to be educated, and we need to educate those on what gaslighting is, because that is a part of the abuse.
I did a personal exercise a couple of weeks back where I really tried to pay attention to every annoying thing I do in my home and around my husband. And there's a lot. I mean, I do a lot of particularly annoying things. I think we all do. And I thought, what would that be like if, I was worried about turning the water on while he was on the phone because he might have a reaction to that? To really try to put yourself in the life of someone who, in their relationship, they're walking on eggshells every day. And it was an interesting exercise to see what that would feel like. And it would be walking around their temper and their problem as if that was my responsibility to control their emotional reaction to me and their abuse. It's a tough spot people are in who are living with offenders.
And Diane, I want to follow up a little bit because I think this is a super important point for folks to understand and be able to support their loved ones. But what is gaslighting exactly? What do you mean when you say that?
Well, I'm not sure of the official definition. What it means to me is when someone basically gives you an alternative reality of what actually happened and convinces you that's the truth. I mean, it can happen in your workplace where someone says, well, you told me to do that. And you're like, no, I didn't. And you really shouldn't have. Like, no. And like you start to actually doubt that you did it the way you remember it and that you did it the way they remember. Gaslighting can be, if you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have hit you. I wouldn't have strangled you. I wouldn't have pushed you because you did this. And that's not quite how you remember it going down. But they are adamant that that's the way that you start to really doubt that your memory of what happened is wrong. Karyn, would you agree with that definition?
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. And see, gaslighting comes from that whole power and control cycle. And the way you use gaslighting to gain power and control is you make people doubt their reality. As they say, I'm not supposed to believe my blind eyes. I mean, your eyes tell you this is the way it works. And there's actually a very old vintage movie about this, where this man is driving his wife crazy by making her believe the lights in the house are actually getting dim, but he's dimming them himself. So she thinks she's going blind because, she's thinking, well, this doesn't make sense. And you can actually go crazy with people doing this to you. I had a survivor the other day here at the Weaver Center, and she told me she got to the point that she was thinking she was losing her mind so much that she actually wanted him to hit her because it was easier than the psychological abuse that he was against her. And that is a profound way of thinking. For her to be hurting so badly because of the way he was making her drive herself crazy. He was saying, you just thought you heard me talking to someone on the phone. I haven't even talked on my phone all day. And she knows she heard this, but she's thinking, is it me? Am I going crazy? She said it was actually at that point, because I'm telling you, the psychological aspects of this are huge. And for whatever reason, there are people, in order to gain that power and control over another person, that is something that they don't want to give up, and they'll do whatever is necessary to do that.
Karyn, I think you were going to jump in and share maybe your perspective on this, or.
Well, what they are saying is absolutely true. Like I gave the example, the relationship I was in, he was very good about telling me who didn't like me. My children don't like you. That's why they don't come over often. That's why I don't have them over for the weekends like I should, because I know that they don't like you. And so you're like, but I haven't done anything. Well, last time they were over, and it becomes a mind play, because now I'm thinking, what did I do the last time they were over? I thought everything went well. And it's so small. It's so little, and it makes you doubt everything. To hear that your parents don't like me. What did I do? I'm never disrespectful to your mom and dad. Why wouldn't they like me? But then that also creates separation, because for me, I was like, well, if they don't like me, I'm definitely not going to bother them. I'm not going to talk to them. Why am I going to talk to someone that doesn't like me? So that created separation and division, which allowed him to do more of everything that he was doing without them knowing. And then you find out later, in my case, find out years later, no, we loved you. Like, what? So it's so subtle. And we do have to be careful about how that power comes into play and into the homes. And like Sharon was saying, to hear her say, I would prefer to be hit than to have that gaslighting done, that's such a power move for the person who's doing it.
I think Karyn has a really good point, though, about how isolation plays into this also. And that plays into the underreport rate. Another great tool in the offender's tool belt is to isolate their victim, separate them from family and friends, using strategies that Karyn's described, and moving, getting angry when family or friends call or come over. And so the more you isolate, that person that you're abusing, the less likely they are to report as well, because they don't have those support systems in their life anymore.
And I want to go back to something that Diane just said, and also that Karyn was bringing out. Family members sometimes get very frustrated, because when you describe the psychological abuse and those sorts of things, it's almost as if people can't wrap their minds around that. Well, he's saying that his father doesn't like me. That seems so minor. Most of your family members will say, now, you want to leave him because he's saying his father doesn't like you? But they don't know the totality of how that breaks someone. A lot of people will understand the physical, but those other forms of domestic violence are so important. Even some of the governmental entities don't quite appreciate that. And when we have our services for victims of physical domestic abuse, they can get that all day. But when you talk about the financial, emotional, psychological, spiritual forms of abuse, a lot of people have trouble understanding that, especially family members that need to listen and educate themselves more.
Wow. A lot of important information for folks out there that may be wondering how to support folks that are dealing with this situation. I want to shift to the elephant in the room. We've got to talk about COVID. And this first question I'd like to direct towards DarKenya and Diane. How has the legal process changed in response to COVID? How are the courts different?
Diane, if you want to start from the order of protection side, and I can continue on to the hearing.
Sure. So a lot's changed with COVID in the court system. I mean, courts really shut down for a period of time. Some are opening back up, but that, puts an immediate halt to offender accountability and victim safety measures that are utilizing the legal system. So, this question is focusing around courts. I will just bring up COVID generally. It has really, we've had some benefits too, which is really great. Some rules have been relaxed in a way that victims no longer have to get their temporary order protection, that ex parte order protection that lasts until the hearing, which is usually about 2 weeks later. So to get that ex parte order protection, victims no longer have to testify before a commissioner. They actually no longer even have to come down to the Family Safety Center if they have a computer or a smartphone. We can do it all with them remotely. So it takes about an hour. They can talk to an advocate at the Family Safety Center. We help fill out all the paperwork. They can sign it through DocuSign. We notarize it and send it on. The commissioner approves it electronically, and it's sent back to that petitioner, to that victim, to secure that order of protection until they do have to appear for the hearing in court a couple weeks later after the order of protection served. So that's a really great benefit. One thing that is not a benefit is we do, in addition to our Family Safety Center on Murfreesboro Pike, we have another one in the criminal courthouse, and that's called the Gene Crow Advocacy Center, and that provides a safe place for domestic violence victims to wait for court, as well as receive advocacy and support, and a private place to meet with the district attorney. That has had to be closed since March because it is a small center. We just cannot get the job done in there in a way that is safe for clients and staff. So that's been a real loss. So we're back at doing things how we were doing them 5 years ago before the Gene Crow Advocacy Center, where everyone waits in the hallway upstairs together and not apart from their offender. And that's been that weighs heavily, on my heart each day during this pandemic.
Thankfully, throughout the pandemic, there's always been a recognition that there has to be support for domestic violence victims. The courts have to be there for domestic violence victims. And in a lot of cases, the courts weren't necessarily closed, but they weren't just wide open to all cases. But there was a carve out for victims of domestic violence seeking orders of protection and so forth, that opportunities were created, for that particular set of circumstances. And unfortunately, just going back to our discussion earlier about some of the tools of abuse, we began to see that where abusers would, tell their victims that, oh, the court's closed, you can't go there. That hearing has been canceled, so you don't, don't bother showing up because the court's not happening, which of course is a challenge. But for the Legal Aid Society throughout our service area, depending on where you are, courts were handled differently. Whether that's going from being able to meet your client in advance, talk through the case, show up at the courthouse, go in with your client, be able to sit beside that client and have discussions back and forth, as attorneys often do as they are presenting their case. Depending on the county where you were, change significantly, where cases were being held online via Zoom or other platforms, where the judge is there, the parties are there, but it's just like you're looking at us here to have that hearing, which of course adds a different element to any court case when you're not able to see someone in person and to see their mode and effect as they are making statements, whether or not the veracity or the truth of their statement, comes across by video versus in person. And so, just from a safety perspective, I mean, it has been challenging, the idea of having to communicate with your client in a socially distanced way, or, having to present the case in a socially distanced way. That being said, I mean, we still do what we have to do to ensure, that those clients get the representation that they need and that playing field is leveled. And where circumstances required it, demanding that in-person hearing or that emergency hearing to get the things done you needed to get done on behalf of that client. But certainly the way, courts have approached it and the way we've approached it has been impacted by COVID. We can't say that it hasn't, but I can say it really has not stopped the work that we're doing.
Let me add to that and dissect kind of what I meant with courts closed. Not every court was closed. Orders of protection, like DarKenya said, kept going. Jail dockets on criminal cases kept going. The bond dockets did stop for a period of time. They're back up and going now, and jury trials certainly stopped. So it's been, a little bit here, a little bit there, and I think that's an important distinction. But for any court that is open, support has been provided, whether that be the legal aid attorneys, their advocates, the district attorney's office, and then our advocates. While we can't be at the Gene Krause Center, we are providing lots of support in phone calls the day before, the day of, during, and texting with victims to try to be helpful during that process and make it less scary and make people at least feel like someone's there with them in some form or fashion, in addition to the district attorney's office.
And I'd comment too quickly, Savannah, just it's interesting that all of us are, recognize the relevance, importance, and significance of the legal aspects of it and are in tune to what's happening in the court. Diane or Sharon would probably disclose this on their own, but both of them are attorneys. Diane, a former district attorney, and Sharon in corporate. I mean, and all of us know the intricate role that the law plays, in the ultimate independence and safety of those survivors who are successful in escaping those circumstances.
I appreciate that. I think I've heard from both you, DarKenya, and you, Diane, is that unequivocally, if I need an order of protection right now, I can go get one, regardless of the
Absolutely. So the Family Safety Center is open 24/7 to assist with orders of protection. And again, you can come in and we can help you with it, or you can call in and we likely can help you with your order of protection.
Wonderful news. And Sharon, I'd like to get you involved in this COVID discussion. What's changed about the services offered in shelter right now?
Well, fortunately, and with the hard work, kudos to the staff of the Weaver Domestic Violence Center. We have kept this center open all throughout COVID, never closed, never turned anyone down, having to use some, special precautions, but we have really had to pivot the way we do business. Early on, this is in March, when the mayor's Safer at Home initiatives took place. We knew we were an essential service and we had to keep the Weaver Center going. Our staff pivoted and we made this work. It was very difficult work because we are dealing with a very deadly virus. We are taking in people who are coming from different places. And so we had to put the protocols in place. We had a learning experience. Kudos to Metro Health, who worked hand in glove with us, and they were on speed dial. What do we do about this? How do we do this? We were there when the testing took 2 weeks, and so we had to send people for testing. We had to quarantine them in a special place here at the shelter. We had to pivot and move the healthy people to hotels. So you name it, we've done it. We've had staff when it was at 2 weeks before they got their results back. But with all that said, we stayed true to our mission. I sat down here with staff on an individual basis and I asked them, can you work with me through this? I'm not asking you to put yourself in any more danger than I'm putting myself. I'm going to give you these masks. We're going to make sure you have this. We're going to beg, borrow, and steal to get you the PPE that we needed, with the doctors and nurses needed, but my people needed it too. So we worked through those difficult times. It took both a psychological approach, a physical approach. It took the best of all of us. But at the end of the day, to have these people in this Weaver Center, they're survivors. They're doing their best, and we're going to give them our best. And we've done that. We've done that. And that is really, really an accomplishment that took a lot of people. The people you see on the screen with me, I called them, I asked them, how can we do this? What can we do? I still have our plan. We can bring you in at DarKenya. When we get finished with this, we're going to party like we've never partied before. We're going to have a great time because it has taken a lot of this community and a lot of our resolve. But no one should have to be at home when it is not safer at home. And that was really our North Star. We kept with our mission and we kept this thing going. I want everyone to understand that. We've had people to come into Weaver during the pandemic who were surprised. It really reminds you of a very nice college dorm. And many people haven't had that experience, but that's what it reminds you of, whereas everyone thinks they're going into the Superdome during Hurricane Katrina. It is not that type of place. We make this a warm, friendly environment. I would have my own kids staying here. I've been here. We are here because it is a safe haven for those that need this level of support. And we will do what we have to do to make this work for you.
I just want to add the YWCA is a beautiful place and it is so supportive
and growing. A beautiful
well.
place that's growing to meet the need as our city grows.
Yeah.
So there's the need for shelter.
Yes, so we're here. You need a place. We're working with the kids. We brought 2 of our programs, supportive programs. We're a Girls Inc. affiliate, and Girls Inc. encourages young girls to be strong, smart, and bold. And our Homegrown Amend program helps young men to understand what healthy masculinity and respect for women looks like. And so we have both of those programs because our staff, because of the changes in the metro school system, normally they work from those schools. They brought those 2 programs to the Weaver, we call them our Weaver kiddos, and they work with the kids here. We were able to get a grant to actually have a classroom for them. So we help them with their schoolwork. We help them with extracurricular activities. We're planning now a holiday fest for our kids, Halloween fest for our kids here. So we are going to do what is necessary to make this as normal as possible for kids who have suffered too much. They've suffered too much. So we're going to do what we can to make it better for them.
Really amazing stuff. And something that I'm wondering about with COVID is I've heard you guys speak to how our services have changed in response to the virus, but what do we know about what's going on with survivors in our communities? Has there been an uptick in calls, maybe a decrease in calls? What's going on?
We have seen an uptick in calls, definitely. And just by chance, we had instituted a text line. This was something that we had planned to do anyway, because we know that it's easier for a survivor to communicate through texting as opposed to having to make a phone call. And the stars aligned and we had all of those things in place. We had also increased our bed space to 65. One thing that we have found is that our calls are going up. Many people want to come in, but they hesitate to come in because they're really afraid of changing their circumstances because of the virus. So as a result, when people do come into shelter, the severity is there. because they will tell you, I waited and waited. I was afraid to come in. I was afraid for my children. Would I get sick if I changed my circumstances? They even use COVID as a tool to keep you at home. If you leave me, you'll get killed. If you go to someplace, people are afraid of their circumstances. So we definitely see that. But we have stayed full up because we've had to quarantine space. We've had to use hoteling like we've never used before. But at the end of the day, our goal is to not turn anyone away. We've had to have people to stay in shelter longer because there were not apartments for them to move to. They could not move, they and their families, in a COVID environment. It just has made things much more difficult, but that doesn't mean that they can't be taken care of, and we do that.
And we've seen an uptick as well at the Legal Aid Society relative to requests for help. About a 27% increase over last year during the same time frame, which further confirms the fact that during this pandemic, some people just simply weren't safer at home. And I know, and we've kind of heard in the news in some respects, the calls to the police may or may not have increased. I'm not sure. However, what we know is that under the circumstances, sometimes law enforcement isn't going to be the first call. Sometimes it's going to be a call to a shelter to do the preliminary, how can I exit safely, or a call to the Family Safety Center to say, how can I get that order of protection done, or a call to legal aid to say that I've made the decision and I need help legally to make sure that I have the support I need for my children, to make sure that I have the vehicle I'll need to get to work, to make sure I have the home that I can go to once this separation is complete. We do know that people are reaching out in a way that we had not seen previously, wanting to know more, wanting to know their options. And so recognizing, particularly, like I said, during the Safer at Home orders, we knew that we had to begin to get creative on how we can reach people, how we could let them know that we're here. And so, things like what we're doing now with the Facebook Live presentations or StreamYard Live to really get this in front of those people who may not have any other access to resources other than through their phones. We increased our radio campaigns in different communities so that you will hear what are the warning signs, what should I be listening for, who can I call, if something is happening. And then, making a more concerted effort in print, whether it's newspapers or articles, and as well as news stations, reaching out and seeking those opportunities to share more information about how people can be safer at home. Because we know that this is impacting people on so many levels, and all of us have to work together, all the nonprofits, all the governmental entities. We have to work together to be that coordinated response that our community needs around this time.
And I want to add to what DarKenya has just said. You have to understand that there are a lot of volatile relationships that may be kept under sort of a limited level of control. But one thing that COVID did was the children were not in school. People did not have the refuge of even going to work. We know from our data here at the Weaver Center, most people come into shelter around those working hours. So there must be some sort of relationship. Either the abuser is at work, or you can leave straight from work, pick up the kids, and come into Weaver Center. That's sort of the route that a lot of people take. But let's say you aren't going to your office. You're either lost your job or displaced or working from home. Also, added to that, you don't even have the refuge of the teachers that might oversee and see something's going on with the child, or your church family. I don't think you can underestimate how going to church was something that some people, that's the only thing they're allowed to do. So they've even lost that. So the close down does have that effect of really creating a situation where already a volatile relationship really becomes worse.
I love Sharon's point, because COVID plays right into an offender's desire to isolate the victim. I mean, it's like a perfect storm for them. which is unfortunate. As far as what we're seeing at the Family Safety Center, we're seeing an increase in the severity of abuse. So the stories people are telling us is what's happening is much more severe. That is a national trend since the COVID shutdowns, and it's deeply concerning. So I'm going to say at this point is just please don't wait until it's too late to go into shelter and find a safe place. It is not uncommon for things to feel like they're settling down right before they can escalate into a more deadly situation. If you're suffering from domestic abuse and your abuser is a strangler, if your abuser has a firearm in that house or uses a weapon or displays a weapon, that is a priority to get yourself to safety.
Absolutely. And so, Karyn, I'd like to throw a question your way.
Sure.
Tell me about kind of the role that these services we've been hearing about played in your life.
Oh, yes, definitely. I'll be more than happy. Both the YWCA and the Legal Aid Society saved my life, actually. I was strangled in my situation to the point where I was unconscious for a short period of time. And I knew right then and there I was not staying in that house that night. I did not trust the situation. And so it was the YWCA that took me in for approximately 2 weeks. And had it not been for them, because I'm not originally from this area and I don't have family here. My mom lives 9 hours away. You know, best friends are out of town in 2 different states. So I didn't have that support of family and friends being here. I didn't have any other place to go. And so they happily and easily took me in and allowed me to stay there safely until I could get my bearings and, you know, then leave. It was due to the Legal Aid Society when I was staying in the YWCA. And at the time I was married. They did ask, you know, where would you like to see yourself in this situation? And I said, I want a divorce. And so it was due to legal aid that found my wonderful, wonderful attorney. I couldn't have asked for a better attorney, to be honest. He was very attentive. He listened well, gave me put just everything out on the table for me to say, this is what it's going to look like. And he kept up in communication. You know, this is what I've done. This is what's going to happen. I knew I was in a very dangerous situation the day that my attorney called and he said, okay, today's the day that he's going to be served his papers. But I've also gone that extra step and I've attached an order of protection to it. And so I thought, thank goodness. But when I got home and my mate was laid in bed with his feet crossed watching TV and the papers next to him, I thought, okay, this isn't going as planned. But their support was amazing. When I had to go to court the very first time I had to go to court with this, it was a representative from Legal Aid that went with me. I probably would have passed out had they not been there. I had never been in that situation before, had never been in front of a judge and you know, with an attorney. My mate at the time went out and actually hired an attorney. And I'm thinking, what? How am I going to get through this? But it was because of their support and that representative from Legal Aid that kept telling me what I can do and kept reminding me why I was there. I thank you so much. I don't know how many times I can say it and who else I can say it to, but thank you, YWCA, for opening up those doors for me. Thank you, Legal Aid. Thank you so much for finding me that attorney, because I am definitely on a better side now due to them.
I'm so glad to hear that. That does mean a lot to me. But so, and I'd like to kind of close out here, y'all, with visions for the future. Are there gaps in services that y'all have gotten your crosshairs that you're coming for? How are we building for the future at each of your organizations?
Well, I'll just say, first of all, Karyn, Thank you so much for really the honor to serve you and telling your story, because your story keeps me going. And so I thank you very much. It really is an honor to serve. I really do. My grandmother says it's more than a notion to serve, but we do serve every day. So thank you so much. I think our biggest concern is that we have to, and we're doing very well right now, continue to have funding and support from the community for the work that we do. We need to make sure everyone understands this is critical, is vital, it is necessary for us to be the city that we want to be. And so that was the one thing I will say.
I'll ditto that for Sharon, that nonprofits have been hit very heavily by this pandemic. Many of them, including Legal Aid and the YWCA, had some of their biggest fundraisers in the spring that had to be canceled. So these good works don't happen without the funds to support them. One thing on my mind, and continues to be on my mind, are batterers intervention programs. Those are the programs that courts often send offenders to learn new approaches, learn new behaviors. And I think there's probably some more work in that area that can be done to make those programs more robust. But just looking forward to getting back to a fully functioning Family Safety Center and Gene Crow Advocacy Center on the other side of COVID.
And I want to thank you as well, Karyn, for sharing your story. And like Sharon said, I mean, it really is the reason we keep going. It's just something about, being a part of a change that's so gratifying to just be able to use your skill set to do that. And so thank you for sharing that. Also, just kind of reiterating what I said earlier in terms of us all working together. I mean, the more we do that, the more I believe that, we can impact the communities that we serve. And so we absolutely have to do that. At Legal Aid, we continue to offer, the legal services that we do. But I mean, our resources, like everyone's, are limited. I mean, there's only so much we can do. And so we absolutely leverage the private bar. I mean, we have approximately 45 attorneys on staff across Middle Tennessee assisting, but we can't do it alone. And so the attorney actually who assisted, Karyn, is one of our pro bono attorneys, one of the network of more than 450 attorneys that we call on, private attorneys across Middle Tennessee who step in and make themselves available to take on cases and assist us free of charge. So we're always thankful for our pro bono attorneys who do that. But I mean, we recognize that the need is great, both for the domestic violence and sexual assault, but also the need that I'm just super proud of our immigration team here at Legal Aid, who supports those persons who you can imagine during this time are, dealing with even more from the perspective that so many won't reach out for help because of concerns about their status in the country, and will suffer in silence, despite the need to exit, just feeling that they're trapped and don't have a way out. And so we continue to do that work with our immigration team with seeking U visas, T visas, valid self-petitions in order to achieve that status that will help them get to safety. So those are just, things we continue to work on as we see needs. And there's a litany more, but I know our time is short. So we'll continue to do that work. And Karyn, again, thank you for allowing us to be a part of your journey.
Thank you. Thank you all for just being there. I would just add, make sure that all agencies are connecting, make sure that all information mimics the information from the last. So if you're telling someone who's in this situation that they need to contact a particular agency, make sure that everyone has that information. Make sure that all your contact phone numbers, websites, pamphlets, flyers, everything is up to date with the correct information. And for those who are out here doing the work, such as you guys that are here on this panel, such as the police officers, the social workers, other advocates, remember why you started this journey. Remember why you said you wanted to do this. Every person that you come into contact with, make sure you greet them and meet them with a fresh mindset and a fresh pair of eyes, because I know it's tiring. I know you get tired of getting those phone calls from that same couple over and over again, but please go into it with a good heart and a fresh mindset for them. Sometimes they need you more than you even know. It's not just about your presence and what you can do. It's just knowing that somebody is there and that they care.
And I know we're wrapping up, but I do want to just quickly reiterate that the Family Safety Center is basically a central hub of all of our services. And so if you are, concerned about, which one to call, you can always go directly to the Family Safety Center and get plugged into everybody at one time. And that's something that all three of us, along with a whole lot of other people, came together to try and create, because we didn't want victims to have to search here and there to find the services that they need.
That's right, DarKenya. Everything is about making it more convenient for survivors in their journey, and not less convenient. So, yep, come to the Family Safety Center and we'll make sure you get connected to the right people correctly and easily.
And just for those who are further out, there are some family safety centers in your area. So contact your legal aid society. We are at las.org, the YWCA at YWCA-Nashville.org, or the Family Safety Center.
.com.
YWCA-Nashville.com. Yeah. I know that, see?
All right, y'all. Well, our time's about up. I'd like to give y'all the opportunity to make sure and put your information out there. I know DarKenya just gave us websites, but is there phone numbers we should have, or email addresses, or anything like that we should have before we leave?
From the Legal Aid Society, you can always call 800-238-1443. 800-238-1443, or go to our website at las.org.
For the Family Safety Center, we're at 610 Murfreesboro Pike. And I think there's going to be a banner across that has our phone number, but it's 615-880-1100. And just Google Nashville Family Justice Center and you'll end up on our page. And we've got a chat feature there that can help. And as for family safety centers across the state, they all have different names, but you can probably find it, again, calling legal aid or the local shelter, or just type in Family Justice Center. It might come up that way also.
And I think they've already put the YWCA. We have a 24/7 crisis call line, 1-800-334-4628, or you could text 615-983-5170. And that is not only for people who are seeking help for themselves. You could also call there if you want information on how to help another.
Thank y'all so much for spending the time here and lending your unique experience to this discussion. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.